Welcome. All right. Well, thank you very much for the time. You're running companies, and even taking this amount of time of your schedules is very appreciated. You know, as much as history is important, I think that what I like to do is start by where are we today and the kind of progress that you feel in your respective businesses and certainly in the world of minority, diverse owned and targeted media, the kind of progress that have achieved. And then maybe we can also talk about what needs to happen to be able to accelerate that momentum. So is there anyone that would like to start, or do you want to start down the road?
I can start.
Yeah, thank you.
Well, you know, I can tell you that being in this industry for as long as I have, I feel like I've definitely seen a lot of changes, positive ones. I mean, to try to stay in the spirit of positivity, but being honest and transparent. I feel that there has been a lot of great changes. I think there's a lot more advocacy out there. We are getting included in a lot more conversations. I think there's still some work to be done, but I think that the progress has happened. I think within the past couple of years, I think for us exclusively at Latino Alternative Television, LATV, we've experienced some great changes. I want to see more change, obviously, and I think that we are in the right space and making the efforts to bring us there. So that's my take.
Okay, great.
Makes sense. And I echo some of those sentiments as well. I think there's been great strides over the last couple of years, especially since the George Floyd tragedy, the death, the murder of George Floyd. And from our perspective, we saw an uptick over the last couple of years in RFIs, RFPs, and recently we founded Mundial Media. And New Kid on the Block have seen great momentum thus far, and I think the change has happened. Want to see more, as some of the colleagues here will probably echo, but we have seen a marked difference.
Excellent to hear. Yes.
So I'm going to throw a little wrench
Yes.
in it. I do echo what everyone is saying. I do think we've seen the change, but from where I'm sitting, I think it's a slow change and it needs to progress. I do think that the clients or the brands that have been a partner before George Floyd are the same partners that are today and are more leaned in. I think trying to understand why those other partners are not as leaned in or what their obstacles or entry to barrier is, I think we need a lot more understanding in that space. So when we look at the spend, which I know AIM today presented a lot of that information, when we look at those numbers, we're growing, but the shift is so small, right? We've seen a lot of advocacy. I think all of us here have been working in days like today, in upfronts, in growth fronts, in play fronts, and there's a variety of spaces that are being created for us. So we're thankful, and we see the advocacy, we see the allyship, but the conversion rate of it is still quite slow.
Well, having been around for a bunch of years, I've seen how, specifically in the Hispanic market, how when the census comes out, and I'm going back, 3-4 censuses, all of a sudden, the market kind of picks up and says, there are Hispanics, let's spend some money on them. In 2010, it seemed like there was a little bit of a reversal. There was, where it came out that the immigration was slowing down and it was more English-speaking Hispanics, and there was a little bit of a turn where there was a thought that you didn't need to invest so much in the Hispanic market, that you can cover it in the general market because of that census information. Then fast forward to 2020, you have a number of things converging at the same time. You have a census that says the numbers are growing greater, and then you have 2020 and COVID and Black Lives Matter and that whole thing that kind of lifts us all up. But I've seen it cycle through, and so it's good to see that it's coming back, but I can't really say that over 30 years it has gone straight up. That has not happened in my experience.
Okay.
We're still 1%.
I want to echo everything that everybody said. As a founder, I think when I launched Canela and I got certified, I thought it was a waste of time. I got certified and I remember going around and everybody's like, what does that mean? Going to clients, agencies, there was not an understanding. So I do want to believe there's been, at least we're in the stage 1 of being able to see change. People understand the need to support minority-owned businesses. And that's a big, big change that has happened in a few years. Now we just want them to put their money behind that understanding. But yeah, now I have a certification. You can go with clients, and there's an understanding, and you don't have to hide. I think when you're a founder, you want to hide a minority-owned business or it's a small business because you felt that will hurt you in the media space. But today, that's a plus because we know all those values that come from a business that is minority-owned when it comes to authenticity and other things that we'll be speaking about today. So I'm happy about that, but my expectations for this market are great, and I can't wait to be here in a few years and say this market's booming. I believe it will get there, but we're going the right direction.
You know what? It's so good to hear you say that because we have heard it from other media entities that are maybe some legacy that say in years past the certification meant nothing except for maybe a few companies that really meant it and their procurement teams maybe captured it. But I think today, particularly with the great work that Kathleen has done with Maven in being able to really capture those that are a minority certified, minority classified, and I think, you know, having a greater understanding of all the different media entities is helping marketers make a decision. You know, I'm so happy to hear that, by the way, I heard some comments about we have made progress, others that are saying, hey, wait a minute, but if the numbers don't lie, then at the end of the day, as an industry, I'm not talking about individual businesses, clearly there's a long road to go in terms of real progress when we still represent, you know, just 0.2 of all the minorities spent in the United States. So I think that sets a little bit of a very low bar and something that I think we need to address. Part of addressing that has to do with that perception that the industry has with inventory. Oh my, well, you know, is there enough inventory? And I just want to tackle it up front. So can you respond to the issue of, does these entities have enough inventory? And quite frankly, not only how you respond, but also in the way that partnerships can also help drive a lot of the cultural impact and connections that your entities can deliver in the marketplace.
I'd like to start if that's okay.
Sure.
Well, in terms of inventory issues, we don't have it at LATV. I think really what it comes down to, I mean, we start with our content. That is really our baby, our strength, our stronghold. And when inventory per se is available based on clients, on our brands looking to say, hey, let's work together, let's create new content, let's look for different ways to bring inventory to market. For example, when we're working with a partner today that they came to us with a certain KPI, we worked together and we actually created 2 new shows based on that particular KPI. And what did that do? That created new inventory. So now, you know, that is actually the perfect way to work with brands and media companies like ours to create inventory together and really get creative. I think that was a panel, someone was talking about it yesterday. I thought it was interesting to say, let's look at things differently and let's work together to make that happen. But for ourselves, speaking for myself, we have not seen that issue.
Okay,
I
great.
feel that's the issue. We generalize. It gives people a good excuse to say, oh, the value of media, we all know, is scale many times. There's other values, but scale is critical. Right. So if we go and say statements like there is not inventory, that gives me the flag to not do that. That gives me an excuse to not even look under the hood and see if that generalization is right. And I think it's important when we do those comments to really start thinking, dissecting that conversation, say, okay, there is not a problem in inventory if you're talking about, for example, streaming. Streaming overall is a very premium environment. There's very few players who are part of it. Canela was the first streaming company for Hispanics in the US. And our distribution is the largest out there. We're in Samsung, we're in Vizio, we're pre-downloading in Xfinity, in every pretty device that you have. So when you talk about scale and reach in streaming, we have one of the largest out there. So when client says there's not scale, I'm like, hold on a second, compare me apples to apples. We're talking about streaming, yes, it's a premium environment. There's not gonna be billions of impressions like web, but the scale, if you compare me with others, is probably very, very large, so there's not that problem. also, or they compare you to, in television, endemic partners are probably gonna have the larger scale, or your general market partners. But then if you go into web, where innovation is happening, where growth is happening, I can tell you a lot of those endemic partners that have been leading the way do not have the largest scale there. And then it's minority-owned businesses that really are the ones that are growing that innovation, that digital space when it comes to scale. So I think it's important to dive deeper when there's statements like that.
I wholeheartedly agree with you, Isabel. I think it's a manufactured issue. I don't think it's a real issue. In Dell Media, we work with over 250 publishers, and we don't have a scale issue. And we're an authentic, minority-owned offering, and whether it's using contextual engine to create more brand-safe placements or partnering for content, I imagine there's plenty of scale, especially with Canela, Adsmoville, Lino's company, LATV. There's plenty to go around.
So I echo everything everybody's saying. I don't think any of us have scale issues. Like with Ads Mobile, one of the first things that we say is like, we compare it to Univision and Telemundo because that's what, everybody thinks of when you think about the Hispanic marketplace. And we always say, if you look at their digital footprint, we have more scale than both of them combined. So we always start with that. But I would actually bring that question back, like Isabel said, to our partners to dissect what they're saying. And a lot of the times, apart from the content, apart from the streaming platforms, it's how they're measuring us. So when we add things like Double Verify or IAS, or we're talking about brand safety, we're using a lot of the parameters that general market is using. And when they're added on to our properties, it actually blocks a lot of the scale, which is how we find ourselves in this question about lack of scale, inventory, and all these things. And it's because we have not equipped the people that are doing this to understand the nuances of our market. Like, for example, this is so obvious, but the word panic is in the word Hispanic. I know, it might be silly here, but you know how much of our campaigns actually get blocked because the word panic is actually in the word Hispanic? Of course that leads to scaling issues. So those are things that are simple, but it isn't, because you have these general market traders that are the ones that are running the campaigns and looking at it. So part of it is really about also educating the people that are running the campaigns to understand the nuances of our markets, and we lift those barriers of scale.
Thank you. Amazing. Lino, final word on that, or?
Well, in our case, we're a smaller emerging publisher. So what we do is we look to take the content that we have, the unique content that we can create, and partner up, right, to get more to increase our inventory, and also to work with technology companies that allow us to then identify the segments and exactly target the audiences that our advertisers are looking for. So that's how we do it.
Well, I appreciate it because, as you could see with the line of questionings that we're having, is really a little bit about debunking some of the myths, right? And I think it's important for the marketplace to understand that. So we're going to stay on that line of debunking myths, okay? And it has to do, so let's get into the duplication. Clearly, every marketer out there is looking to reach consumers in new ways and to reach new consumers, period. But you always, there's an undertone of, well, but is there duplication? Is there duplication with general market? So how do you respond to the duplication question? And what do you think happens in case, because by the way, there's duplication, you could argue, in just about every platform in one way or another, but what happens when you tee it up in the way that your platforms tee it up to the consumer?
I think, yes, duplication is going to exist in every type of media. I do think Hispanics media in general, and streaming in particular, the value you bring, you're able to even reach audience. Within the sub-segment of the Hispanic community, there's a segment that is not going to those English sites or English streaming services. So you're able to provide a segment that is not going to be duplicated anywhere else, and you're going to be able to also reach that segment that is going to those general market properties. So there will be duplication, but we have the extra value to bring a segment that is unduplicated, that very few people can claim that. And I think that's what makes Hispanic media very powerful. Your brand can really own that space and stand out with that audience because you be the main voice speaking to them. So I think that's something unique. It's a plus. I wouldn't think Hispanic media should ever seen as a minus, a duplication, because we are the only ones with a black market to media companies that can claim we're reaching a segment that maybe is not found everywhere.
Excellent. Thank you for sharing.
So
Jessica.
I agree with Isabel. So before Ads Mobile, I was actually on more of a general market company working under Hispanic solutions. So I was at Yahoo. And one of the bigger questions that we had, and this was a result of total market approach, was always about duplication, right? So on general market pages, they could reach Hispanic. What's the point of like reaching them on Yahoo and Espanol? There was a lot of measurement tools that allowed for us to showcase what that duplication was, what that number was. But what we always found interesting was that duplication was just one metric. Conversion was a different story. So you were able to reach them across the board, right? But that didn't mean they connected with the content and they did not convert. That's what we provide, right, on the Hispanic side. Everybody has their own offering. We all have a different voice when it comes to content, what we have available for our users. And that emotional connection is why they're coming to us. And with that authenticity and emotional connection, we see that brand resonance and we also see that conversion. So duplication is gonna happen, that's there. But it's how do you take that audience, how do you connect with them, and how do you move them down the purchase funnel? I think that's what the focus really is of what we bring to the table.
And also the fact that there's incremental audiences that we all are bringing to the table. But
Totally.
at the same time, if you're reaching the same audience with completely different messages in a completely different environment, and in our space, it's about sports. It's about telling sports stories. We'll reach people, it might be the same in some cases, completely differently. We catch people in a different emotional moment for that to trigger the buying response that our advertisers are looking for. So that's an important.
Thank you.
I just want to add to that, you know, while there is a duplication's okay. It's okay to be, you know, to duplicate. I think the key differentiator is really the targeting. You know, when you're looking at Latino LGBTQ programming on LATV or Afro-Latino programming on LATV, we're looking at different audiences, the way they behave with different content. So yes, there is the duplication, but it's how you target them and how the brands reach this particular audience. That's really the key. That's how you get what, you know, you get the audiences to engage with the brands by targeting them specifically to the audiences that you're looking to reach.
Excellent. Thank you.
I think just to add, I think minority-owned Hispanic media sits in a very unique place. I think we bring that authenticity that is lacking from other platforms, and I think it's not. I don't think being duplicative is an issue. I think, in agreeing with all of the other panelists here, I think bringing that authenticity and that emotional connection that Jessica talked about is that extra superpower that Hispanic-owned media brings.
I like that word. It's an extra superpower that is delivered. So statistics, we saw that the Hispanic segment represents 0.2% of media spend. Your platforms are not part of a universe that is well known and invested by most marketers. So let's just put it out there. What can we do to increase awareness and investment in Hispanic-owned and targeted in order to increase this number to be more in line with what it should be based on the potential, segment size, and opportunity? Yep.
Oh, go.
I think we've been
We
talking
agree.
about this.
We agree about this so much.
Yes, we've been talking about this because I think there's so many things we can do. But I mean, in the spirit of unity, I think that's really it. I think the onus is on us. You know, we know the agencies are doing their part. We know AIM is doing their part. What if we look at ourselves and say we are really creating those barriers in the sense that we need to work together, just as Black-owned media has done it so well. Why don't we work together? Just look at this list of panelists, people here doing some amazing things. We can work together. We can create our own coalition, our own voice, and say, let's make a difference. Let's go out there and say this is our power. We're 62.5 million strong. I think we have the numbers to show it. So it's on us.
I also think that when it comes to Hispanic-owned media companies, there's a misperception that when you invest endemically into the category, that we are participating in that the same way as the investment. There is no correlation. In fact, it's an inverted. When you look at, the total spend in multicultural or diverse, it's a small piece. So you take your microscope out and you divide, and you see that the spend might be greater in Hispanic endemic. And then when you look at owned, it's completely the opposite. And I think it's important to point that out, is that we're not getting that. And part of the reason is because normally the air is sucked out of the room by the bigger players, the players who have been around, the legacy networks that started out as stations and now, networks for a long time. The air is always sucked out of the room, and there's a little left for the rest of us. And that's an important point, because I think it's somewhat unique to us, because there's been so much activity in the Hispanic market in terms of investment, but it's not coming to us owners.
So I echo what everybody says. I keep on saying that. But to go back to what Gisela said, I do think a collaborative spirit is really needed. We see with Black-owned media, they've done a great job of moving forward together, like as one. And it's been very beautiful to see. There's a lot of learnings for us from that. But I will say that there's also this barrier for us, because we understand why there was such a focus on Black-owned media. Obviously, Hispanic has been around for 50 years. We were at a smaller advantage. We all are trying to get more representation, but we were at an advantage, right? So of course, equity is all about creating paths for us all to have an equal starting point, right? So it's not equality, it's equity. So we understand that. However, as a side effect of that, what we've seen is that Hispanic has taken it like we've been put in the back burner. And it has somehow feels like we're trying to solve for one before we get to the other, which is not possible. There's not a solve for one and we're gonna move to the other. These are things that have to be worked on simultaneously. We all have to be collaborative in the process. So I do think, to Gisela's point, we do need to band together. We need to share our learnings. We need to target our obstacles together, and we need to move together as one. But not just Hispanic, we need to learn from Black media as well. We need to learn from AAPI. We need to learn from LGBTQ+. There's a lot here. There's cross learnings, and we have to be more collaborative. It's not about stealing revenue from each other. It's about stealing that market share that is representative of our population.
Excellent. I think that we celebrate the success of any segment, and we applaud that. And I think part of the conversation then becomes, how does a marketer and how do media companies, from the very early steps, invest to the opportunity of the growth segment, whichever that is. In this case, we're talking about the Hispanic market, which of course is hugely significant in the United States, and be able to make those business decisions so that at the end of the day, a high tide rises all. And I think that's really ultimately, so when we're saying we're at 1.2, we need to be at 2, 3, 4 by 2025, that should permeate, quite frankly, and the Hispanic market should be given the consideration of where it stands today in the marketplace. I think it's what I'm hearing from all of you. Thank you for that. We just have maybe a minute and a half or so. So what I want to do is, let me see if, I think we talked a little bit about the question that we have here.
Can I just make a statement?
Sure.
I think one of the important things, if there's a takeaway, or at least something that I can contribute in terms of my point of view here, is that I think the process has to be a partnership with the brands and the advertisers, and that necessitates a little bit more time, sometimes a lot more time, to work together so we can actually collaborate on the types of things that work for them and work for us, right? It's not just answering an RFP in 48 hours. It's about what kind of content, what kind of things can we create that really work for you both ways, And again, it's a collaboration. It's sitting at the table and saying, these are the types of ways that we can help you and you can help us. Yeah. Because the investment then will be invested to build more infrastructure in our own companies and allow us to do more.
You know what, and I think that's critical. I think what I'm hearing you say is, hey, part of it is investment for today because brands need to deliver growth immediately. But how do you begin a process where you're also investing in the future? Right?
Exactly.
And by the way, normal product cycle, right? I mean, you're going to invest not only in the short term, but you're going to invest in the long-term viability of that product or service. As we conclude, can you share with us, as final words, really the reasons and why to invest in Hispanic-owned and targeted media companies? And if you have that elevator pitch that you have to tell the industry, what would that be?
The moment is now. I mean, you want the brand loyalty. You want brands to really, you want to partner up with a market that is powerful, that is significant, that is growing, that is the largest growing minority group. So brands should get in now. It's the time is now, because the cost of entry is going to be a lot more in the future. Don't be left behind.
Thank you. Tony.
U.S. Hispanic is America's growth engine. And on a standalone basis, it's the 5th largest economy in the world. So to Gisela's point, don't get left behind. It's a tremendous opportunity, multi-layered and nuanced.
Wonderful. Thank you. Jessica.
So yes, don't get left behind, but I would also say that we provide a level of authenticity and audience reach that is just unprecedented, right? We are able to really connect with those audiences. And if you look at who the upcoming audience is, that Gen Z and Millennial, they're unforgiving. They really are. And they like authenticity, and they look for communities, and they look for utility. So if you're not connecting with them now, and they are that audience that is, has passed that threshold, the majority of them are now diverse. If you're not making those connections now, to Gisela's point, later on, the cost of entry is going to be exponentially higher, but they're also not going to lean in because they've never heard from you before.
Unintentional.
Thank you. Lino.
I think the reason is to provide more voices, to elevate voices that have not been heard before. That's the important thing. I'm in the sports business, and I don't necessarily look to people to invest in us because we're covering the news that some of our bigger competitors cover, but because of the stories we tell. We're investing in that where some of the bigger players are not. We tell sports stories. These are voices, these are great stories of great athletes that inspire, motivate people, and we love doing that. That's what we want to do.
Isabel, the last word.
The last word. So I know we talk a lot about credibility and bringing a product that connects deeper with the audience. But for me, the reason I launched Canela, and I think is why I think companies like Canela are important, is I saw a lack of innovation in technology. And I think we always look at the legacy, the two big legacy partners, Univision and Telemundo, but the reality, there has not been disruption in this market for a while. And sometimes it takes a young Latina with a big wish to disrupt this market and say, let's lead through innovation, because a lot of the biggest media companies today did not exist a few years ago. Think about TikTok, think about Netflix. So we are providing advertisers an opportunity to lead that innovation, not only by being the first streaming service out there for Hispanics, but we have a whole innovation lab, and we're thinking, how do we engage audiences in Web3? How do we connect in a deeper, and we're at the edge of the newest tech out there. So Latino community is younger, they're more willing to try new technologies. So it's the most ideal segment when you talk about innovation, and I think there's a huge opportunity for us to lead that way by being small, nimble, opportunistic, and understanding of what is out there. So I think innovation is who's gonna win this, and I think it's not gonna be the legacy companies, I dare to say.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And I will tell you that from an AIM perspective, we're certainly going to, today's not an end all, right? This is now, over the next year, see how all progresses. And we certainly hope to come back next year, because we will be here next year, with a story of progress.
Should we set our time
Okay.
now?
365, 23, and
Yeah.
Hey, ladies and gentlemen, can I have a round of applause for our great leaders. Thank you so much, all of you.